Manish, there are 6 words in the world of yoga that every modern yogi asks about. Moksha, Samsara, Dharma, Karma, Atman and Brahman. How do we define them and how do we navigate them in the world we live in today?
Thanks, Rana. I think every yogi is interested in these subjects. And if you're non-Indian, then it can be a little confusing. And that's why I think it's relevant for all our listeners today. So shall we start with moksha?
Let's start with moksha.
Moksha comes from the root word mukti, liberation. It is in the nature of any human being or any living organism to work towards its own freedom or liberation. Conceptually, moksha means a liberation from the continuous cycle, we call it samsara, which we'll come to, of birth, life, death, rebirth. And this goes on and on for millions of years. So as I go through my life, if I have some unfulfilled desires, and when I die they're still unfulfilled, they stick to my soul, as we'll come to Atman later. And in my next lifetime, there's a chance for those karmas to play out. Moksha means there's a liberation from this unending cycle. If you think about it, if you've done this millions of times, there's an ennui that comes with it. And then you want to end that. And that is the driving force for somebody to go down spiritual training, meditation, yoga, so that eventually in the Hindu tradition, in the ancient Indian tradition, moksha is what a person works towards, not an idea of heaven or hell, not an idea of goodness, but an idea of liberation from these unending cycles, and that is moksha. In a way, in a nutshell, it would mean that you start to become free from your compulsions today and keep getting free till that ultimate freedom.
So what would be a concrete example or a metaphor we can use? For instance, you're on the treadmill of life, like any analogy or metaphor we can use to better explain, or as an example to touch on.
Sure. So you and me, we spend time, we live together, and you have some compulsions, I have some compulsions. If we can start to reduce that, if I can reduce my compulsive nature in anything, it could be my behavior, the way I interact with people, everything is very compulsive. So I'm bound by my compulsions. So I try to free from it. All of us in the physical body, we are compulsively eating all the time. So if you can do a little bit of a fast, so now you're not compulsive. You can work with your sleep, you're not so compulsive. And like that, with my behavior, my thought, if I can get a little freer every day, slowly I become less and less complex, and eventually to a liberation that is today conceptual for me, moksha. But if I can be free in my day-to-day, I think that's useful.
So it's observing your thought process every day, trying to notice the patterns and then try to liberate yourself from them.
But that's a yogic approach.
Exactly. That's a yogic approach to it. It's quite a vast topic to discuss, and there's a lot of question marks. And how do you relate them then to other, let's say, schools of thoughts, or I'm not sure if it's the right way to say religions. Is there a way to compare it?
100%. Like Bhakti Yoga, Christianity, Islam, it's faith. You have faith on the divine. And there, by complete surrender, by complete aligning with the divine, you reach liberation from your own karmas and your own thought processes. In the yogic approach, in Raja Yoga, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha, you're understanding the patterns, and when you can see the patterns, then you're free from them. And these patterns, as we say nowadays, about 90% of the things you do in life is because of your subconscious. Now you could say that these are your karmas and so on and so forth. And these are playing out on a daily basis. As you start to sort of find those patterns and free from them, that's the path of moksha.
So how would you combine moksha and samsara in a, I would group them together.
Yeah.
With the 6 words that we've chosen to discuss today, those 2 for me are like the starting phase.
That's right.
One is like the cycle and the other one is like completely the liberation. And moksha is a liberation, but also is a way to reach freedom.
That's right.
Moksha is often associated with liberation, but in its definition, it's actually freedom. So how would you define, or how would you say you're living your life as a free or in freedom?
Yeah. So, samsara, the idea of samsara is that life is continuous, life, death, rebirth. So this is different from the Abrahamic faiths where it's linear. The Indian faiths, the Indian traditions, the systems are all cyclical. So when you and me die, if this is the way that we perceive life, we're going to come back if we have not fulfilled everything that was in us, our desire and so on and so forth. Or we've not understood the nature of desire as the Buddha would teach. So this is called samsara. Now, we say that there's a dukkha. You perceive a certain unsatisfactoriness with material existence. You're in love, you're with the person that you're in love with, still there's something unsatisfactory, it doesn't
Dukkha.
match up. You're on your dream job, you're in your dream place. So this dukkha is the trigger to get out of samsara. You begin to realize, as we all do at some point, that the material world, the world that we live in, is beautiful, but there's something amiss. And I don't really get that complete sense of peace, joy, freedom. So I start to look within. And that process gets me out of samsara eventually through moksha.
It would be nice to find a word-to-word translation for dukkha into another language.
Yeah. So the
Or
common
a
word is
definition.
suffering.
Suffering.
But the way we look at it is not the suffering of, say, I lose a parent. So there's a suffering to that. But even when my parent was there is a slight unsatisfactoriness with everything in life. So is that okay?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We can. I mean, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
But I know that there's no word-to-word translation for Sanskrit. It's quite.
So it's a language designed for the spiritual matters. So it's tough to get it into any other language.
We'll probably discuss that in a different conversation, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a fascinating one to
Yeah.
take. We should consider that. Shall we move on to the other two?
Yeah.
So again, in my perception of the next two words would be obviously dharma and karma and dharma.
Yeah.
I don't know why I like to order them that way, in the sense where karma and then dharma is a natural progression. So I'll let you just provide a little bit of light on how you perceive those two, and then I'll share some questions around that.
Sure. Karma is one of the foundational principles in Indian thought. And this is there in the Hindu tradition, in the Buddhist, in the Jain, in the Sikh tradition. Karma is a collection of all the things that one has done and the intention that has gone behind that over millennia, perhaps, over lifetimes. But if you're not looking at lifetimes, even on this lifetime. Now, these are deep rooted in us, and it leads to the way we behave and interact. So we say that there are three kinds of karma. This is slightly technical, but please bear with me. So one is sanchita karma. That is the accumulation of all my karmic influences throughout my lifetimes. Then you have what we call as prarabdha karma. The karmas that this lifetime, you've taken on a lifetime to work out. And then there's agami karma, the karma that we are creating on a daily basis. Once again, karma is a collection of all those things, those drives, those intentions that have happened for lifetimes. So if you don't look at lifetimes, and you think of it as just linear, then this lifetime. When I did something.
So if you look at the layers that you've just described, are they like, would it be fair to say that they are like an onion that you peel and every layer that you remove is focused on
That's one way. It's a storehouse of all my karmic debt.
But they are interlinked?
Yes.
Or they, so
yes,
technically
100%. So when I was younger, I was over smart, for example, and I tried to cheat somebody. Now, when I cheated that person, there was something in that interaction that was not good, and that person's ill feeling towards me that I earned leads to like in the biblical traditions or in the Abrahamic faiths, as you sow, so shall you reap. Every tradition in the world has the same idea. So I've done that, so that karmic debt is in me, I will have to suffer for that. Or I've done something good, but my intention was to get a lot of praise for that, so it doesn't get the absolute value. When a person, we call it Jiva Mukta, when a person becomes in Moksha, a yogi, I use the word, a saint, a person has reached Moksha, such a person has no intention behind what we do. A lot of the times people come and say, I'm trying to change the world, I'm doing so much good. But more or less the intention is self-gratification. So they're still bound to the fruits of their actions. Karma can be thought of, the word karma means action, to act. But in this way, we're talking about the karma theory. So all of us are bound to the fruits of our actions. We don't do anything without expecting something in return. That expectation keeps me bound to my life. So I'm constantly stuck. A person who is liberated doesn't have that. So they continuously do, but without any expectation. So they're not creating more and more karma.
There are instances where karma would be referred to as, let's say, whenever it's negative, it's a punishment. And this is not at all the way we're defining karma here.
Not
We're
at
just saying it's the different way of just evolving and observing the three different layers. Would you be able to just repeat those three different layers and maybe just break down the etymology of it and how we can better memorize them or understand them?
It's very technical, so at least
We can
for
even drop
listeners.
that.
Yeah. Sanchita is the karma from
Sanchita.
lifetimes. Yeah. Prarabdha is those karmas chosen for this lifetime. So we say that I wanted to be famous, but I died. Now that unfulfilled desire to be famous will have to be lived out in another lifetime. So in the lifetime that I take on, say I am born as Susanna. So Susanna's prarabdha karma would be to become famous. That drives her through her life because it is the karma that has been chosen to live out in that lifetime. And then whatever Susanna or whatever I do on a daily basis is agami karma. So the way I behave, the way I interact is building karmas for the future.
Okay. That's
on the karma side.
Yeah. Obviously on the karma side. I had a question that I forgot, but we can move past that. You've
But you'll have to get it answered, otherwise you'll have to come back.
No, don't worry.
To solve the karma.
Karma,
Another
exactly.
lifetime.
Liberation, moksha. You mentioned something interesting, and it doesn't strike you immediately when you say it's obvious, but at the same time, it doesn't strike you immediately when you say a yogi is referenced as a saint.
Yeah. When I use the word yogi from India, we use it with deep reverence.
Yeah.
I've been a yoga teacher for more than 2 decades, but I call myself a yoga teacher, not a yogi, because there's a vast difference between that and a yogi. A yogi would be somebody who is fully immersed in the subject, who has realized wisdom, and we use it with deep reverence. So that's why.
Yeah, very interesting. And then, obviously, we transition to the fourth word, and then Dharma. Yes, I'm just trying to find a way to describe it. It's such a special word, and there are different approaches to it. If we were to just summarize it in a short way, what would be Dharma for you?
Dharma is law, and the root word is dhir, meaning to uphold. So there are laws, like there's laws of physics, there's laws of the universe, there are laws of societal conduct, and those are just the way a society lives, interactions happen. Now these change through time. And then there is the Dharma that's based on the eternal. So there's some eternal things. You will be born, you will die. These things have never changed. And your process of life. So the way you live a Dharma that is in tune with your station in life, which means that, say, in this capacity, I'm a teacher. So it is my Dharma to teach. I'm a son to my parents, so the way I interact is bound by the law. The way a child behaves with their parents, the way a husband and a wife behave, the way society behaves. So somebody who's a politician has to take care of the people that have voted for that person. Yeah. So that is the dharma. If the person does not do that, then they're going against their dharma. So say the politician is only focused on, doing everything else, not taking care of his people. He's against his dharma. Swadharma, as Krishna would describe in the Gita, Swadharma is one's own dharma. So you've got the eternal dharma of life, the eternal principles of life. Then you've got the Swadharma of my own, say I'm a teacher, so I've got a dharma towards teaching. And then relationships.
Soi in French means myself.
Self,
Yeah, soi.
Yeah.
It's funny how it actually kind of says the word my own dharma and to others. Would it be fair to say that, I know it's not the same, but these would be values or expectations in your role towards your relationship with your parent or your partner or your work or whatever your purpose in life is?
Yeah. The classic case comes from the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is at the battlefield. You can see his cousins, his uncles, his teachers, they're going to war. And he has a moment of moral cowardice, just like we have many a times. Somebody at home, somebody in the office is behaving poorly. You don't want to tell them, even if it's your responsibility to take care of somebody. And you say, no, they're having a bad time. In the same way, he's having a moral dilemma. And then Krishna describes to him that you are a king. You have a responsibility to your subjects. If you think that you can run away from the battlefield and go sit in a cave and be peaceful, it's never going to happen. So if I'm a dad or you're a mom and, for example, we abandon our responsibility and we think that we'll find peace in some meditation retreat and XYZ, it's never going to happen because you have to fulfill your dharma. There is no running away from it.
Yeah. I mean, the Gita in many ways is the book of reference, or would be fair to say the holy book. Or do we use it as a... The reason why I'm asking the question, because a lot of ambiguity around how do we reference in the modern days the Gita, and very much when you reach the discussion about Dharma, there's a lot of references to the Bhagavad Gita.
So beautifully then.
And it's a great story where it drives a certain direction.
Yeah.
So on that topic, where would it stand? Where would it fit compared, let's say, to a Quran or a Bible or?
That's a much vaster topic. The Indian system is not based on a book. So Bhagavad Gita is one of the books, the most well known.
Yeah.
But like that, many masters on the subject have spoken about life. Different books, different understanding of life. Yoga Sutras, the Vaisheshika Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, Brahma Sutras. There are so many texts. So it is phenomenal in its description, but it cannot be compared because it's not based on one.
Exactly. Yeah. And now when we move to the last two words, Atman and Brahman. Atman by default is a soul. And the biggest question is, we ask ourselves, do we have a soul? And then the debate comes in. I have a soul, I don't have a soul. How do I relate it? What does it mean? Have I experienced it as a proof that I have a soul? Again, a whole lot of questions and debates around that. In our context today, what would be a proper way to define it outside than a soul?
Can I start with both Atman and Brahman?
Because they are obviously intertwined.
So Brahman, the root word is that which is expansive, massive, huge. Brahman refers to the substratum of the cosmos. The entire cosmos, the substratum of it, from which this is all constructed, construed, happening within the substratum. You can say cosmic soul, but the better way to look at it is the substratum on which the entire cosmos is based. The matter that we see, the consciousness which underpins all of that matter, cosmologically, is Brahman. That in each individual is an Atman. Jiva is the individual soul that is sort of described as Atman in its context within of me and within of you. Now, as you rightly said, the closest to the Abrahamic faiths would be the idea of the soul. And in Atman, in the Hindu way of thinking, if you look at it in the Vedanta perspective, the idea espoused there is that the Atman is the same as Brahman. So, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the cosmos, derives from that. It's not that God created me, it's the same. So, that is the idea in Vedanta of non-duality, that this and that is all the same, we are all the same stuff. Now, as you raise the question of soul or non-soul, that in yoga, of course, it's a duality. There is consciousness and there is matter. So it's two. But Buddha is the only teacher or great spiritual master who defies that and says, I searched and I found nothing permanent. So the Atman, before I come back to the Buddha, in the Hindu text is described as that which cannot be burnt, cannot be destroyed, no weapons can touch it, you cannot wash it, nothing can be done. The soul is eternal, has always been, and we keep taking on lifetimes and lifetimes where we have an external body, physical body, Stula Sharira, and we have a mental body, Sukshma Sharira. So there's no question of soul realization. We say soul liberation. Right now, my soul, if it is there, has completely identified with my mind, Manish. So when there's a distance between the two, and we realize that actually my body mind is peripheral to this eternal soul. So that's Atman. Since you raised the question of the Buddha defies that. He says, I searched and found nothing permanent. So he says there's no such thing out there, Brahman, it's always changing. And here also it's always changing. So he says that the idea of the soul, and this is why Indian thought is so beautiful, because you have all different, completely opposite. They're completely opposite. He's saying it doesn't exist. That's why he was considered a heretic. So much so that the idea of a permanent Atman is the cause of suffering, because you continuously feel there's something permanent, whereas there isn't. So just in a nutshell, we've discussed Atman, but we've also brought in Buddha's Anatta, non-self.
I think it's a great way to put it. And he actually, in his perspective, simplified it so much without denying the value of the topic. Yeah. So, I mean, these are the six words. So if you were to summarize and take away one for each.
Sure. Samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, life, death, rebirth. Moksha, a liberation from that continuous cycle. Karma, the entire storehouse of all the imprints of intentionality that leads to you living a life in a particular way. Dharma, the law that allows you to live the law of life and your own law of how you interact. Brahman, cosmic intelligence, and Atman, the individual soul that's a part of that. Thank you, Rana. Thank you for posing these questions. Friends, it's very important for modern yogis and seekers to have a working understanding of these. It's not that the way we've described it is the only way. It cannot be. It's up to you to understand it for yourself, and you'll understand it in a way that's perfect for you. It was just an attempt to share a generic idea.
It's always personal. It's always your own views. And that's why I'm thinking it would be interesting if anyone who's listening to us right now, if they can share with us their own definition of those 6 words, and if there is something specific that changed their life, their views of life, after really understanding those words. That would be very interesting to read through.
Exactly. As Awaken co-founders and podcast hosts, we believe that meditation should be removed from all dogma and should be practiced by everybody as is. I want to be here, and I don't need any context or any reward to be present. The reward is to be present.
Super.
This is what we do.
We'll wait to hear from you. Don't forget to send us your own definitions of the 6 words, and until we meet next time, have a great day.
Namaste.
Namaste.